Nobody could remember the last time the Grand Assembly fell completely silent. Not during the border wars. Not during the Plague of Whispers. Not even when the Trade Syndicate accidentally bankrupted 3 solar systems in a single afternoon. But silence came now, spreading through the massive chamber like frost across glass, as 47 species stared at the ancient holographic display that had just flickered to life above their heads. The arbitration protocol. Every diplomat in the room had heard of it. Most had assumed it was a myth, a story told to frighten young politicians into behaving. But here it was, projecting symbols and languages that predated their oldest civilizations, demanding something that had not been demanded in 10,000 years. Choose an alpha. One voice to speak for all organic life. Unanimous selection required. Time remaining. 60 seconds per species. Ambassador Thessaly Vorn of the Crescent Hegemony rose to her full 7-foot height, her insectoid body clicking with agitation. Her species controlled the largest military force in known space. Surely they would nominate one of their own. Surely the other species would fall in line, as they always did when hegemony flexed its considerable muscle. But before she could speak, a soft pulse of bioluminescent light drew every eye to the Harmony Collective's delegation. Keeper Luminance, a being that resembled a jellyfish made of captured starlight, was projecting an image. Not a face, not a title, just a simple maintenance badge bearing a human name and a photo of a tired-looking man with sandwich crumbs on his collar. Danny Park. Maintenance Engineer. Level 3 clearance. That Vorn's mandibles clicked in confusion. Is this a joke? But the Trade Syndicate's chief negotiator was already nodding, her 4 arms gesturing in agreement. We concur with the Harmony Collective's nomination. As do we, rumbled the Deep Dweller's representative, a creature that looked like a living shadow wrapped around a skeleton of crystal. The Deep Dwellers had not agreed with anyone about anything in 300 years. One by one, every delegation in the chamber raised their appendages, tentacles, or energy projections in support. The militant Crescent Hegemony. The isolationist Void Walkers. The hive-minded chorus of 10,000. All of them pointing at the image of a human maintenance worker who was currently, according to station records, on his lunch break. Vorn felt her political instincts screaming that this was wrong, that this was madness, that she should protest. But something deeper, something she had spent 40 years learning to ignore, recognized the truth of it. She raised her own arm in agreement. The arbitration protocol registered unanimous selection. The ancient hologram shifted, displaying new information. An entity was approaching from dark space. It would arrive in 72 hours. The Alpha would speak for all organic life. And the Alpha was currently in Maintenance Shaft 7G, eating a ham sandwich. Danny Park had been looking forward to this lunch break for 3 days. The atmospheric processors on level 12 had been acting up. The Crescent Hegemony's ambassador had complained about her quarters temperature 17 times, and someone had clogged the Deep Dweller's specialized filtration system with what appeared to be ceremonial incense. He had earned this sandwich, that he was halfway through it, listening to an audiobook about ancient Earth naval battles, when his communicator started buzzing. It started screaming. Then every emergency channel on the station activated simultaneously. Danny sighed, wrapped up the remaining half of his sandwich, and began the long climb out of the maintenance shaft. Whatever had broken this time, it was apparently catastrophic. He was not prepared for what he found when he reached the Grand Assembly. 47 species, representing trillions of beings across hundreds of star systems, all staring at him in complete silence. Danny checked his coveralls for obvious stains. He checked his face for sandwich residue. He checked behind him to see if there was someone more important standing there. There was not. Ambassador Vorn stepped forward, her massive form casting a shadow over the small human. Danny had fixed her quarters heating system last month. She had not said thank you. She had not said anything at all. Now she was looking at him with an expression he could not read on her alien face. Congratulations, human, she said, and her voice carried across the silent chamber. You have been chosen to speak for all of us. Danny blinked. I'm sorry, what? An entity approaches from beyond known space. It will arrive in 72 hours. You will represent organic life in negotiations. I fixed toilets, Danny said slowly. I think there's been some kind of mistake. Keeper Luminance pulsed a gentle blue, and Danny felt the meaning wash over him like warm water. Not a mistake. Unanimous. Every species. All pointing at you. Danny looked down at the sandwich still clutched in his hand. He looked up at the 47 delegations watching him with what he was beginning to realize might be hope. He thought about all the times he had helped beings on the station. Not because it was his job, but because they needed help and he was there. He had never wanted to be important. He just wanted to fix things and eat lunch in peace. 72 hours? He asked. 72 hours, Vorn confirmed. Danny took a bite of his sandwich. If he was going to save the galaxy, he was going to need his strength. Okay, he said, still chewing. Someone want to tell me what exactly I'm supposed to negotiate about? The chamber erupted into chaos, and Danny Park stood at the center of it all, wondering how his lunch break had gone so terribly wrong. The Alpha's ceremonial chair had been designed to accommodate beings ranging from 2 feet to 20 feet tall. It shifted and adjusted constantly, trying to find a configuration that would suit a human body. Danny sat in it awkwardly, his feet dangling several inches above the floor, still holding his sandwich because nobody had told him where to put it. Around him, 47 species had erupted into the loudest argument the Grand Assembly had seen in decades. But they were not arguing about the selection itself. They were arguing about who would get the honor of explaining to Danny why he had been chosen. The Harmony Collective nominated him first, insisted a crystalline being whose name Danny could not pronounce. They should explain, but the Trade Syndicate has known him longest, countered a 4-armed negotiator. We should provide context. We have the most relevant testimony, clicked Ambassador Vorn, her massive form pushing through the crowd. Danny raised his free hand. Hey, excuse me. Hello. Nobody listened. He put 2 fingers in his mouth and whistled. The sharp sound cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Every species turned to look at him. Thanks, Danny said. Look, I don't know what's happening, but maybe you could just take turns? One at a time, like normal people. There was a long pause. Then Keeper Luminance pulsed a soft agreement, and the chamber slowly organized itself into something resembling a queue. The Trade Syndicate went first. Their chief negotiator, a being named Prosperity Eternal, stepped forward with all 4 arms clasped in a gesture of respect. 3 years ago, a toxic leak threatened our delegation's quarters. Our atmospheric requirements are very specific. Most species cannot breathe what we breathe. We submitted an emergency repair request, expecting to wait for a specialist. Danny remembered that day. The green gas billowing through the corridors. The panicked clicks of the syndicate members trapped inside. You arrived in 11 minutes. Prosperity Eternal continued. You wore no protective suit. You simply held your breath, fixed the leak, and walked out. When we tried to pay you, you said. She paused, consulting a recording device. You said, you guys were suffocating. What was I supposed to do? Invoice you while you died? Danny shrugged. It was just a loose valve. Took 30 seconds to fix. You could have died, Prosperity Eternal said quietly. But I didn't, and neither did you. So it worked out. The Deep Dweller's representative moved forward next. The shadow-wrapped being communicated through complex tentacle movements that most species needed translators to understand. Danny did not. You learned our language, the creature signed. No other human has ever bothered. You learned it just to ask if our quarters were comfortable. Your species lives in total darkness, Danny said. I figure it must be weird being on a station with lights everywhere. I wanted to make sure you were okay. We were not okay. The light levels in our section were causing us pain. You spent a week recalibrating every fixture on our level. You did not ask for permission. You did not file paperwork. You simply fixed it. Danny shifted uncomfortably in the giant chair. That's just basic maintenance. No, signed the Deep Dweller. That is basic kindness. There is a difference. One by one, the testimonies continued. The Void Walkers spoke of how Danny had modified their prayer room's gravity systems so they could float during meditation. The chorus of 10,000 described how he had learned to distinguish their individual members when most species saw them as identical. A small, frightened delegation of refugee beings recounted how Danny had found them extra blankets and warm food when they first arrived, terrified and far from home. But it was Ambassador Vorn's testimony that silenced the chamber. 2 years ago, she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft, a young soldier from my delegation attempted to end his life. He had seen too much war. Lost too many friends. He went to an airlock with the intention of spacing himself. Danny's hand tightened around his sandwich. He remembered. The maintenance human found him. He did not call security. He did not alert the military attaché. He sat down next to the boy in that cold cargo bay and talked to him for 6 hours. Our species were technically at war with humanity at the time. The soldier could have killed him. Instead, Vorn paused, her mandibles clicking softly. Instead, the boy is now alive. He is healing. Because a human who fixes toilets decided that an enemy soldier's life was worth saving. Danny stared at the floor. He wasn't my enemy. He was just a kid having a bad day. Keeper Luminance drifted forward, their bioluminescent form pulsing with colors that Danny had learned to read over 3 years of friendship. Blue for calm, gold for warmth, and something deeper, something purple and ancient that meant truth. We chose you, Luminance pulsed, because you see us as people. Every single one of us. Not aliens. Not enemies. Not problems to be solved. People. That is the rarest quality in the galaxy. Danny finally set down his sandwich. His hands were shaking. I'm not special, he said quietly. I just treat people how I'd want to be treated. That's it. That's all I do. The chamber was silent. Then from somewhere in the back, the young Crescent soldier Danny had saved stood up. Danny had not noticed him there. That is exactly why you are special, the soldier said. Because you do not believe you are. An alarm pulsed through the station. The sensors had detected the approaching entity more clearly now. It was not a ship. It was a structure the size of a small moon, ancient beyond comprehension. And it was broadcasting a message in every known language. Assessment begins. Present your speaker. Danny looked at his sandwich. He looked at 47 species who had put their faith in a maintenance worker. He thought about the Crescent soldier, alive because Danny had sat with him in the dark. Okay, he said finally. Tell me everything you know about this entity. And someone get me some paper. I'm going to need to take notes. The Alpha's quarters were designed to accommodate any possible species in the galaxy. This meant 17 different atmospheric zones, furniture that shifted form every few minutes, and a bathroom that Danny was afraid to use because it contained devices he could not identify. He had not slept in 30 hours. The station's garden dome was empty at 3 in the morning. Danny sat on a bench beneath imported earth oak trees, staring at leaves that should not exist this far from home. The artificial sky above simulated a gentle night, complete with fake stars that looked nothing like the real void outside. You cannot sleep either. Danny did not jump. He had heard Ambassador Vorn's heavy footsteps approaching for the last minute. The insectoid diplomat settled onto the bench beside him, her massive form making the metal groan in protest. The bed keeps changing shape, Danny said. I think it's trying to find a form I like. It hasn't succeeded. The Alpha's quarters are not designed for comfort. They are designed to impress. I'm not impressed. I am tired. Vorn made a sound that might have been laughter. You are not what I expected from a human. Your species has a reputation for arrogance. My species has a reputation for a lot of things. Most of them are probably true somewhere. Danny picked at a loose thread on his coveralls. Can I ask you something? You are the Alpha. You can ask anything. Why did you vote for me? Really? Vorn was silent for a long moment. The fake stars twinkled above them, casting gentle shadows through the oak leaves. Because I am tired, she finally said. I have spent 40 years playing political games. I have lied and manipulated and betrayed. I have done terrible things in service of my hegemony. And through all of it, I told myself it was necessary, that this is simply how the galaxy works. She turned her massive head to look at Danny. Her compound eyes reflected the starlight in fractured patterns. Then I watched you, a small, soft creature who could be killed by a strong gust of wind. You walked onto the station and treated every species with the same simple respect. You did not calculate advantage. You did not seek power. You simply helped because helping was the right thing to do. That's not special, Danny said quietly. That is the most special thing I have ever seen. Because you made it look easy. And that made me wonder if perhaps I've been wrong all along. If perhaps the galaxy does not have to work the way I thought it did. Danny did not know what to say. He watched a fake shooting star cross the fake sky. Tell me about this entity, he said finally. The real truth, not the official briefings. Vorn leaned back, her exoskeleton clicking softly. It is old, older than any civilization currently alive. The archives call it the Arbiter. It appears every 10,000 years, approximately. It asks questions. What kind of questions? Questions about worth, about purpose, about why organic life deserves to continue existing. Vorn's voice grew heavy. 17 species failed to provide satisfactory answers. Their worlds are gone now. Asteroid fields where planets used to be. Danny felt cold despite the garden's controlled temperature. And nobody knows what answers it wants. Nobody who failed is alive to tell us what they said wrong. The few records that survive suggest that the Arbiter is not looking for any particular answer. It is looking for truth, authenticity, something that proves organic life has value. That's not helpful. No, it is not. The next 2 days blurred together. Danny was subjected to endless preparation sessions. Diplomats from 12 species tried to coach him in formal rhetoric. He fell asleep during the 3rd lecture on proper forms of address. Military advisors wanted him to project strength. Danny pointed out that he weighed 160 pounds and the Arbiter was the size of a moon. Philosophers debated the nature of existence while Danny ate ration bars and wished he was back in maintenance shaft 7. Finally, with 24 hours remaining, he snapped. Everybody out, he said. His voice was not loud, but something in it made every being in the room freeze. All of you. Now, except Luminance. 46 species filed out in stunned silence. Keeper luminance remained, their soft glow providing the only light as Danny dimmed the room systems. I'm going to fail, Danny said into the darkness. Luminance pulsed a questioning blue. Everyone keeps trying to make me into something I'm not. A diplomat, a warrior, a philosopher. But I'm none of those things. I fix broken pipes, and I eat sandwiches. That's all I know how to do. He sat down heavily on the floor, his back against the wall. What if we don't deserve to continue? He whispered. What if the Arbiter is right to judge us? I've seen the reports. We fight wars over nothing. We destroy planets for profit. We treat each other like garbage. Maybe a species that chooses a maintenance worker to represent them deserves to die. Luminance drifted closer. Their colors shifted to something Danny had never seen before, a pattern that his brain translated as profound uncertainty mixed with ancient sorrow. That luminance pulsed slowly is exactly the question the last 17 species could not answer. They could not admit that perhaps they were not worthy. They argued and boasted and threatened, and the Arbiter found them hollow. So what am I supposed to do? Admit we're terrible and hope it goes away? I do not know. Nobody knows. That is why we chose you. Because I'm honest. Because you're the only being on this station who would ask that question and mean it. Through the dome's transparent ceiling, Danny could see the real stars now. And among them, growing larger by the hour, the impossible geometric shape of the Arbiter eclipsing the dying star. I need more sandwiches, Danny said finally. If I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to need a lot more sandwiches. The Arbiter did not approach the station the way ships approach things. It did not slow down or adjust course or request docking clearance. One moment, it was a distant shape among the stars. The next moment, it simply existed beside the station, close enough that Danny could see its surface through the observation deck's windows. The surface was wrong. That was the only word Danny's brain could find for it. Geometric patterns covered every inch of the moon-sized structure, but they refused to stay still when he looked directly at them. Lines that seemed straight became curves. Angles that appeared sharp became soft. It was like trying to read a book that rewrote itself every time you blinked. Do not stare at it too long, Ambassador Vorn warned. 3 of my soldiers have already reported headaches. It's giving me a headache just standing here, Danny admitted. He was wearing his cleanest coveralls, which still had a small stain on the left sleeve from a lubricant spill last week. 47 species had argued for hours about what he should wear to meet an ancient cosmic judge. Danny had ignored all of them that a beam of light extended from the Arbiter's core. It crossed the void between the structure and the station's main hangar, solidifying into what appeared to be a bridge made of captured starlight. Danny had seen a lot of strange things in 3 years on the station. He had never seen anything like this. The station's communication systems crackle with a message broadcast on every frequency. Speaker will present alone. Danny looked at the light bridge. He looked at the 47 species gathered behind him on the observation deck. Keeper luminance pulsed an anxious violet. The young Crescent soldier Danny had saved stood at attention, trying to look brave. Well, Danny said, here goes nothing. He walked toward the hangar, his work boots echoing on the metal floor. His pockets were full of emergency ration bars, a habit he had never been able to break. Behind him, he heard Ambassador Vorn call out something in her own language that his translator rendered as a blessing for the dead. Encouraging. The light bridge felt solid beneath his feet, which was strange because it looked like it should feel like nothing at all. Each step he took created small ripples in the light, like walking on the surface of still pond. Danny kept his eyes forward and tried not to think about the endless void below him. The entrance to the Arbiter was not a door. It was an absence of wall, a space where the geometric patterns simply stopped and darkness began. Danny hesitated at the threshold. Nothing to it but to do it, he muttered and stepped inside. The interior made even less sense than the exterior. Danny walked through corridors that looped back on themselves, passing through rooms that he was certain he had already passed through, except the furniture was different. The walls displayed images, and after a while, Danny realized they were showing him things, civilizations. Dead ones that he saw cities burning under strange suns. He saw beings that looked nothing like anything he had ever encountered, screaming in terror as their worlds crumbled. He saw 17 different species in their final moments, all of them reaching toward something, pleading with something that he could not see. You're showing me what you did to them, Danny said to the empty air. The images continued. More death, more destruction, more endings. I get it. You're powerful. You've killed a lot of people. Is this supposed to scare me? The corridor opened into a vast chamber. Danny could not see the walls or the ceiling. He could only see darkness, and at the center of that darkness, a single point of light that hurt to look at and impossible to look away from. You are the speaker. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was not sound exactly. It was mathematics made audible, pure information pressed directly into Danny's brain. That's what they tell me, Danny said. You are small. Yeah, I know. You are fragile. Getting that a lot lately. Previous speakers presented with armies, with weapons, with demonstrations of power. Danny looked down at his stained coveralls and his work boots and his pockets full of ration bars. Sorry to disappoint. Assessment begins with a question. The point of light pulsed, and Danny felt the weight of 10,000 years pressing down on him. Every species that had stood where he was standing. Every being that had tried to convince this ancient machine that organic life deserved to continue. All of them had failed. Why should organic life continue to exist? It was, Danny reflected, a pretty good question. He had spent 2 days trying to come up with an answer. Diplomats had given him speeches. Philosophers had given him arguments. Military advisors had given him threats. Danny had ignored all of them. Can I sit down first? He asked. This might take a while. The darkness shifted. Something that might have been amusement rippled through the chamber. Unusual request. I've been standing for like an hour. My feet hurt, and I think better when I'm sitting. There was a pause. Then, from nothing, a chair appeared. It was not fancy. It was not impressive. It was a simple metal folding chair, exactly like the one Danny kept in maintenance shaft 7G for his lunch breaks. Danny sat down, pulled a ration bar from his pocket, and broke it in half. Want some? He asked, holding out the other half toward the point of light. The arbiter did not respond for a very long time. No speaker has ever offered me food. First time for everything, Danny said, and took a bite. Danny chewed his ration bar slowly. The point of light that called itself the arbiter watched him, or at least that was what it felt like. Being watched by something that had existed for longer than his entire species. You want to know why organic life should continue to exist? Danny said finally. That's a big question. It is the only question that matters. See, that's the problem. I'm not a philosopher. I don't have big answers to big questions. I fix things. That's what I do. Then fix this. Provide an answer. Danny finished his ration bar and brushed the crumbs off his coveralls. The chair beneath him creaked slightly. Somewhere in the distance, or what felt like distance in this impossible space, the geometric patterns continued their endless shifting. Okay, let me tell you about a kid I met. Irrelevant. Maybe. But you asked me a question, and I'm answering it my way. You can destroy us all if you don't like my answer. But you're going to hear it first. The arbiter fell silent. Danny took that as permission to continue. 2 years ago, there was a soldier on the station. Crescent hegemony. His species and mine were at war. Technically, we were supposed to be enemies. But this kid, he had seen too much. Lost too many friends. He went to an airlock one night, planning to space himself. Danny stared at the point of light. It did not respond. I found him. I didn't call security. I didn't report him to his commanders. I just sat down next to him in that cold cargo bay and talked. For 6 hours. About nothing mostly. About Earth. About his homeworld. About whether pineapple belongs on pizza. This is your argument for organic life? A conversation about food? No. My argument is that I sat with that kid for 6 hours because his life mattered. Not because he was useful. Not because I would gain anything. Just because he was a person who was hurting, and I could help. Danny pulled out another ration bar. His hands were steadier now. You ask about war. Yeah, we fight wars. We've been fighting wars since before we could write. But we also sit with our enemies when they're hurting. We build gardens on space stations, so beings from 60 different worlds can see something beautiful. We learn languages that hurt our throats just to ask someone if they're comfortable. These are small things. Everything is small compared to you. That doesn't make it meaningless. The arbiter's light pulsed. Danny felt something press against his mind. Not hostile, but searching. Curious. Show me. The chamber changed. Suddenly, Danny was standing in his own memories. The toxic leak in the trade syndicate quarters. The deep dwellers, darkened corridors. The garden dome at 3 in the morning. The cold cargo bay where a young soldier had decided to live. You do these things without expectation of reward. Reward for what? For being decent? That's not how it works. Previous speakers spoke of glory, of achievement, of conquest and discovery. They presented lists of accomplishments as proof of worth. And you killed them anyway. They were hollow. They spoke of what their species had done. They did not speak of who their species was. Danny sat back down in his folding chair. The memories faded, leaving only darkness and that single point of light. I can't speak for who my species is. Humans are complicated. We do terrible things and wonderful things, sometimes in the same day, sometimes in the same hour. He shrugged. I can only speak for myself. And who are you? I'm a guy who fixes things. That's it. That's all I know how to be. When something is broken, I fix it. When someone needs help, I help them. Not because I'm special, because that's just what you do. The Arbiter was silent for a long moment. Then it showed Danny something new. 10,000 years of observation. Civilizations rising and falling. The same patterns repeating over and over. Violence, greed, self-destruction. Species after species climbing toward the stars only to tear themselves apart. Your species is young. Humans have existed for less than a heartbeat of cosmic time. Why should I believe you are different? Danny watched the parade of death and failure. He thought about human history, the wars, the cruelty, the countless ways his species had hurt itself and others. I'm not going to argue that we're different, he said finally. We're not. We're violent and greedy and selfish, just like everyone else. Then you admit your unworthiness. I admit that we're not perfect, but 47 species chose me to speak for them. Not their greatest warrior, not their smartest scientist, not their most powerful leader. They chose a guy who fixes things and eats sandwiches. Danny stood up and faced the light directly. Maybe that means something. Maybe it doesn't. But I think it means they're tired of the patterns too. I think it means they want something different, even if they don't know what that looks like. And I think the fact that a maintenance worker is standing here talking to an ancient cosmic judge is proof that change is possible. He took a deep breath. We're not worthy. Not yet. But we're trying. And that has to count for something. The Arbiter's light pulsed in colors Danny had never seen before. The darkness around them seemed to deepen, pressing in from all sides. One final query, the Arbiter said. Danny waited. If I determine that organic life must end, will you attempt to resist? It was, Danny thought, a very good question. Danny thought about the question for a long time. The Arbiter did not rush him. It had waited 10,000 years between visits. It could wait a few more minutes. No, Danny said finally. You will not resist your destruction. I didn't say that. Danny sat back down in his folding chair, feeling suddenly very tired. I said I won't attempt to resist you. There's a difference. Explain. If you've watched us for 10,000 years and still think we need to end, then maybe you're right. I'm not smart enough to argue with 10,000 years of data. You've seen more civilizations rise and fall than I can imagine. You know things I'll never understand. Danny stared at the point of light. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice remained steady. But I won't go quietly. Not because I want to fight you. Fighting something the size of a moon seems pretty pointless. But giving up isn't something I know how to do. I'll spend whatever time we have left making things a little better for everyone around me. Fixing things. Helping people. Being decent. He shrugged. That's just who I am. You can't judge that out of me. The Arbiter processed his response for exactly 17 seconds. On the station, 47 species watched sensor readings in terrified silence. The young Crescent soldier Danny had held his breath. Ambassador Vorn's mandibles clicked in an unconscious prayer. Keeper Luminance pulsed colors that had no translation. The Arbiter's weapons systems began to charge. Danny felt it happen. A vibration in the air, a pressure against his skin. The point of light grew brighter, and for a moment he was certain this was the end. He thought about his parents back on Earth, who probably didn't know their son had been chosen to speak for all organic life. He thought about the sandwich he never got to finish. He thought about all the things he had fixed over the years, all the small kindnesses that had led him to this moment. Then the weapons powered down. The light pulsed with something that Danny's exhausted brain could only interpret as amusement. This is the first time a speaker has neither begged nor threatened. Danny blinked. What? The first time one has offered me food. It was just a ration bar. The first time one has admitted uncertainty while refusing to surrender. The ancient machine made a sound like stars being born. The geometric patterns on the walls finally stopped shifting, settling into stable configurations that Danny's eyes could actually follow. Assessment complete. Danny gripped the arms of his folding chair. And organic life is granted continued existence. The relief hit Danny so hard he almost fell out of his chair. His hand was shaking badly now, and he realized there were tears on his face that he did not remember crying. Why? He managed to ask. Not because you have proven worth. Your species has not proven worth. No species has ever proven worth. Then what? Because you have demonstrated the capacity to recognize your unworthiness and improve regardless. Because you offer me food when you believed you might die. Because you chose to be decent when there was no reward for decency. The Arbiter's light dimmed slightly, becoming easier to look at. The previous 17 species believed they were worthy. They could not conceive of a universe where they might be wrong. You know you are not worthy, and yet you continue to try. This is the first time in 10,000 years that I have found this quality in a speaker. Danny wiped his face with his sleeve. So, what happens now? I leave. I return in another 10,000 years. And I hope that the organic life I find then has learned something from this moment. The light bridge reappeared, extending from the chamber back toward the station. Go home, Danny Park. Fix your broken things. Eat your sandwiches. And perhaps, when I return, your descendants will be worthy. Danny stood up on shaking legs. He walked toward the light bridge, then stopped. Hey, he said, turning back. Thanks for the chair. You are welcome. He walked back across the bridge of solid light. The station's hangar seemed impossibly bright after the darkness of the Arbiter's interior. And waiting for him on the observation deck were 47 species, all of them watching him with expressions he could not read. Ambassador Vorn stepped forward first. What happened? The weapon charged and then stopped. We thought, we're okay, Danny said. Everyone's okay. The chamber erupted. Species that had been enemies for centuries embraced each other. Beings that communicated through scent filled the air with joy. The young Crescent Soldier was crying. Keeper Luminance pulsed colors so bright they were almost painful. Vorn looked at Danny with something new in her compound eyes. What did you say to it? Danny thought about the question. He thought about the ration bar and the folding chair and the admission that organic life was not worthy, but trying anyway. I told the truth, he said, and I share my lunch. 3 days later, Danny was back in maintenance shaft 7G. The faulty water recycler had been acting up again, and someone had to fix it. His communicator buzzed constantly with messages from ambassadors wanting meetings, scientists wanting to study him, historians wanting to record his story. He ignored all of them, except one got a message from the young Crescent Soldier. Would you like to get lunch sometime? Danny smiled, typed yes, and took a bite of his sandwich. Outside the station, the stars continued to burn. The Arbiter was gone, traveling back into the void between galaxies. And Danny Park, maintenance engineer, alpha of 47 species, continued to fix broken things, because that was just who he was.